Welcome to HFY Codex. If you love epic sci-fi stories where humanity shines, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for thrilling HFY adventures. Join us and be part of the journey. The rusted deal, the cold wind blew across the open landing yard as Jocks stepped off the hover train. He was tired, hands in his pockets, boots scraping metal dust off the cracked ground. Around him, rows of broken ships stood like old ghosts. Forgotten, rusted, hollow, he had one goal: find a junked ship with a decent engine core. Something he could fix and maybe sell. He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. He was just a mechanic who knew how to make dead metal breathe again. But as he walked between silent hulls, something pulled at him from the far corner of the yard. There, half covered in scrap, sat a ship that looked like it had fallen from the sky in flames. Its hull was dented, its paint burned away, its engines silent. But the cockpit glass was oddly clean, like someone had touched it recently. Jock stepped closer, brushing ice from the side panel. "No ID tag," he muttered. Frowning, he turned to the scrap dealer, who sat nearby, smoking. "This one got a core?" Jocks asked, pointing. The man squinted, then shrugged. "Old piece, barely worth it. Give me 300 credits, and it's yours." Jocks blinked. 300. That's nothing. The man grinned. Exactly. Something was wrong. But Jocks didn't walk away. He paid the man, signed the transfer code, and called his hover hauler. The broken ship was dragged to his private hangar, and Jocks followed, still unsure why he even bought it. Inside the hangar, the lights flickered as the storm outside roared. Jocks pulled on his work gloves and approached the battered ship. It looked worse in the bright lights: scorched wires, holes in the hull, shattered control panels. He pried open the side hatch and stepped inside. Boots echoing on the metal floor. It was freezing cold. The emergency heaters were long dead. He lit a small hand torch and moved forward carefully. Old crates were stacked in corners, all empty. Then he heard it. A sound, small and sharp, like nails scraping metal. Jocks froze, listening. The sound came again, scratching from behind a sealed door near the back. He moved toward it, pried it open with his crowbar, and light spilled into the hidden chamber. Inside, curled up in the corner, was a girl. Her skin was light blue, her body thin, wrapped in torn rags. She had no shoes, no blanket, and her arms clutched her knees as she shivered violently. Her large, black eyes stared at him with fear, not moving, not speaking. Jocks knelt slowly, lowering the torchlight. "Hey, it's okay," he said gently. "I'm not going to hurt you." She didn't answer, but her lips trembled as her eyes locked on his face. Jocks pulled off his jacket and wrapped it around her. She was ice cold, like touching a block of frozen steel. He picked her up carefully, shocked by how light she was. She didn't resist, only whimpered softly as he carried her to the heat chamber. Jocks laid her down near the heater, set it to max, and brought every warm blanket he had. Steam rose from the vents as warmth filled the room. He watched her as she slowly stopped shaking. Her breathing steadied. She opened her mouth, voice barely. A whisper. "Leary," she said. "My name?" Jocks nodded, sitting nearby. "I'm Jocks." She closed her eyes, exhausted. He didn't ask questions yet. She needed rest, not pressure. But in his mind, alarms were ringing. Who was she? Why was she inside a junked ship, locked in a sealed compartment? He walked back to the ship and opened the main console, trying to access flight records. Nothing. The data had been wiped clean. No logs, no crew names, no origin planet. Only a single warning left in corrupted code: "Do not open." He stared at the words, his stomach sinking back in the heat room. Leary stirred in her sleep, murmuring softly. "Don't sell me," she whispered. "Please, don't sell me." Jocks stood frozen, heart heavy, Whatever her past was, it wasn't good, and now she was in his care. Broken, cold, and afraid, but something. Inside him, something quiet and old, told him he had made the right choice. He sat beside her, watching the snow swirl outside the hangar glass. This wasn't what he expected when he bought a broken ship, but maybe, just maybe, it was exactly what he needed, and maybe, just maybe, so did she. Heat in questions, the storm outside grew louder, but the small room inside the hangar stayed. Warm and still, Jox sat near the heater. Watching the alien girl sleep under thick blankets, her skin had more color now, and her fingers were no longer stiff from the cold. He leaned back against the wall, still wearing his gloves, unsure of what to do next. This wasn't a normal rescue, and she wasn't a normal girl. When she finally opened her eyes again, her voice was soft and unsure. "Where am I?" she asked. "You're safe." Jox replied, "In my workshop on EOS Station 9. She blinked. Slowly, like the words didn't feel real, he handed her a mug of warm broth. Steam rising gently from it, she held it with both hands, staring into the liquid before taking a tiny sip. Jox noticed the way she sat, always ready to run, even while sitting down. "What's your name again?" he asked. "Leary." She said quietly. "What's yours, Jox?" he answered. "I'm a mechanic. I found you in the ship I bought." Her shoulders tensed. "Okay?" Her fingers tightening around the mug. "I thought I'd die in there," she whispered. "I was in the dark so long." Jox didn't ask the question that burned. In his mind, who locked you inside? Instead, he stood and walked to the other side of the room. Checking the lock on the door, "You don't have to tell me anything until you're ready," he said, "but you're not alone now." For the first time, she looked directly at him, her eyes wide, uncertain, but grateful. As night fell, Jox moved her to a cleaner room with a real bed, still close to the heater. He left a soft towel, socks, and a fresh shirt for her, then stepped out to give her space, back in the control room. He connected the broken ship to his console and began scanning deeper. Most logs were gone, but there were fragments, timestamps, scrambled file headers, encryption levels he hadn't seen in years. He frowned as something blinked on the screen. A hidden data burst attached to the navigation logs. He clicked it open, and a red warning flashed. "Biotag detected. Class 5 asset." "Asset," Jox muttered. "What the hell are you?" Before he could dig further, he heard footsteps. Light and slow. Leary stood at the door, dressed in the shirt he gave her, arms still hugging herself. She said, voice shaking. "Do you have food?" "Real food." He nodded and led her to the kitchen shelf. Pulling out dried protein chips and heat bread, she stared at the simple food like it was treasure. Smiling for the first time, "Thank you," she said, sitting at the small table no one ever gave me food before. Jock sat across from her, curious and quiet. He watched her eat slowly, savoring each bite like it mattered. Then she asked, "What do humans do when they're not fixing ships?" He raised an eyebrow, surprised. "We live, laugh, sleep, cook, argue, dream," he said. She looked thoughtful. "That sounds peaceful." Jox tilted his head. "Where are you from, Leary?" She lowered her gaze and didn't answer. Her lips pressed tight. "I can't tell you." She whispered, "If I do, you might give me back." "I'm not giving you to anyone," he said firmly. Her eyes shimmered, but she wiped them quickly, pretending it didn't happen. Jock stood and opened a drawer, pulling out a small med scanner. "Let me check your vitals," he offered. "You were nearly frozen." She hesitated, then nodded, letting him wave the scanner over her arm. The screen lit up with unusual results. Blood chemistry spiked with unknown markers. Her heart rate was strong, but her immune system showed strange patterns. "Your DNA's different," Jox muttered, mostly to himself. "I know," she replied. "That's why they locked me up." He looked up, surprised, but she didn't explain. Instead, she stood, wrapping the blanket tighter. They called me a project, not a person. Jocks clenched his fists, his jaw tight. He had seen injustice before, but nothing like this. You're a person to me, he said. Leary is your name, not a number. She gave him a weak smile, then turned to go back to her room, but just before she stepped out, she paused and said, "You're the first person who didn't look at me like a monster when she was gone." Jocks sat back down at the console and pulled up the data again. Now he was sure someone wanted her hidden, someone powerful, and if they came looking, he'd be ready. Because whatever Leary was, she was no monster. She was a mystery, and she had chosen to trust him. That alone meant she deserved a chance, even if the galaxy didn't agree. The missing identity, Jocks, didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. His workshop stayed dark, except for the glow of his screen as he dug deeper into the strange data from the ship. Each file fragment, each digital scar, told him one thing. This wasn't just a broken transport. It was scrubbed on purpose. Not by pirates, not by smugglers, but by professionals. And whoever locked Leary inside wanted her erased from history. Jocks leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes, thinking hard. He needed answers, and fast. By morning, Leary sat at the table again, eating warm fruit paste and asking questions about hoverbikes. She acted like nothing had happened, but Jocks could see the edge in her eyes, the fear hiding just below her small smile. He didn't push her, not yet. Instead, he opened a line to an old contact, Taro, a salvage tech who owed him favors. Taro's gruff voice buzzed through the console. "You don't call unless it's trouble, Jocks. I found something in a broken ship," Jocks said. "I need help unlocking its history." "What kind of ship?" Taro asked. Jocks gave him the model number, the encrypted logs, even the pulse signal he extracted from the hull. Then there was silence. Taro's voice returned, but it had changed. Lower, uneasy. "Forget that ship, Jocks," he said. "Forget it and walk away." "I already paid for it," Jocks replied, and there was someone inside. Taro paused, then said one word. "Our class." Jocks frowned. "What does that mean?" But Taro had already disconnected. The screen flickered, and Jocks stared at the silence. Feeling cold again, he looked at Leary, still quietly chewing her breakfast. Unaware that her existence was stirring shadows, later that day, while Leary napped, Jocks took a closer look at her left shoulder. He noticed something small under the skin, a faint line, almost like a scar. Carefully, with a scanner, he magnified it and found something shocking. An embedded chip, not military, not civilian, but something else, encrypted with a level he hadn't seen in years. He ran a basic read, and a single code popped up, VX109 Pry. He had no idea what that meant, but it made his heart pound faster. He leaned back in the chair, trying to stay calm. Just then, Leary walked into the room with a question. "Do humans dream while they're awake?" Jocks blinked, caught off guard, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, we call it imagination," he said. "Why?" She sat beside him, hugging a pillow. "Sometimes I see places I've never been, but they feel real, like memories that aren't mine." Jocks's hands tightened on the chair's armrest, her words sinking deep. "What kind of places?" he asked. She looked at the ceiling, eyes far away. A tall tower with blue fire, machines talking without words, stars that move in shapes. Jocks didn't know what to say. What was she really? Just then, a warning flashed on his wall screen. Motion sensors had picked up movement outside the hangar. Jocks jumped to his feet and pulled down a viewing drone. Sending it out through a hidden port, the camera showed two figures near the yard gate. Cloaked, quiet, holding devices that swept the ground. They weren't traitors. They weren't lost. They were searching, and they were armed. Jocks shut off all outer lights, locked every door, and turned to Leary, who stood frozen with wide eyes. "Get in the smuggler's box," he said quickly. Now, she didn't ask why. She just moved, crawling into the hidden crate he used years ago to hide spare parts. He sealed it and covered it with old panels, then stood beside the entry door with a shock baton in hand. Minutes passed, long and heavy. Then the knock came. Hard, slow, deliberate. Jocks opened the door just a crack. "We're closed," he said. One of the figures leaned closer, their voice soft but cold. "We're looking for stolen cargo. Ship code Zeta 7 to 112 came through this sector. Never heard of it." Jocks replied, not moving. The figure tilted their head. "We're authorized to search." "Not without a warrant," Jocks snapped. "This is private property." There was a pause. Then they stepped back, silent again. Jocks closed the door and bolted it shut, chest rising with tight breaths after a long while. The figures vanished from the cameras, slipping back into the storm. Jocks opened the smuggler's box, and Leary crawled out. Shaking, "They were the same ones," she said. "The ones who locked me in." Jocks knew now, with no doubt, that someone had built her, hidden her, and now wanted her back. But he wasn't going to let that happen. Not while he was still breathing. Hunted * Jocks didn't wait for sunrise. As soon as the cloaked strangers were gone, he started packing. The warm safety of his hangar had become a trap. The people hunting Leary weren't thieves or bounty hunters. They were trained, patient, and government-funded. They didn't kick in doors. They watched, they waited, and when the time was right, they erased people. Jocks wasn't going to give them that time. He loaded tools, food packs, water cartridges, power cells, and every spare blanket he had. He didn't tell Leary they were leaving until the last bag was zipped. She didn't ask questions. When he said, "We have to go," she just nodded, pulled on the thick coat he gave her, and followed. Jocks led her to an old scout ship buried behind junk walls. It wasn't fast, but it had stealth tech and off-grid jump codes. He got it running with a few slaps to the ignition coil and a deep prayer to whoever still watched over old mechanics. By the time the first security drone buzzed past the station, they were already off-world. Leary sat in the co-pilot seat, quiet, eyes locked on the stars outside. "I'm sorry," she said suddenly. Voice low, "I didn't mean to bring danger." Jocks glanced at her. "You didn't bring it." "They did." She nodded slowly, but the guilt didn't leave her face. After 3 jumps through abandoned relay routes, they landed on a cold, cracked moon. It had no name, just a number and a sky full of dust. But Jocks knew someone there, Anne. Old miner named Bale, who owed him fuel and silence. Bale's shack was half buried in a crater, surrounded by broken drills and metal bones. He didn't smile when he saw Jocks, but he let them in. Leary stayed near the door, silent as Jocks spoke too. Bale in whispers. The old man raised an eyebrow when he glanced her way, then shook his head slowly. "You don't know what you're holding," Bale muttered. "Or maybe you do." "She's not cargo," Jocks said, voice firm. "She's a person," Bale scoffed. "She's more than that, and that's the problem." Later that night, while Jocks and Leary sat near a heater eating ration stew, the power flickered. Jocks' hand went to his stun blade without thinking. "Bale," he called out. "Everything okay?" No answer came. Then the back door crashed open. 2 men in dark armor stormed in. Weapons drawn, visors glowing red, target located. One of them said, "Into a cum." Extracting now, Jocks moved without thinking, slamming one attacker with a wrench. Leary screamed as the second lunged for her, but she ducked fast. Grabbing a loose pipe from the wall, she swung wildly. Catching the soldier's wrist with a loud crack, Jocks tackled the first man into a crate, the shock blade hissing to life in his hand. Sparks flew, bodies crashed. and Bale finally appeared behind them with a double-barrel stun cannon. One shot sent the attackers flying backward, twitching on the floor. Leary stood shaking, gripping the bent pipe tightly, her eyes wide. And full of panic, "They were here for me," she said, her voice cracking. "Always for me." Jocks dropped the blade, grabbed her shoulders gently and said, "And I'm always going to stop them." Bale kicked one of the soldiers, grunting, "These are clean-class mercs." Hired by someone big, Jocks nodded, his mind racing. "They called her a target, not a girl." "She's something more than a girl," Bale replied. "You ever hear of the Arcborn?" Leary's breath caught, her knees giving way as she collapsed into Jocks's arms. Her lips moved almost too quietly to hear. "That's what they called me, the Arc-Child." Jocks carried her back to the scout ship. Heart pounding, he didn't need more details right now. All he needed to know was this: she wasn't safe, and he wasn't giving her up. No matter what they called her, no matter who sent those soldiers, Leary was his now, not to own, but to protect. And he was going to do just that, even if it meant war. Whispered truths. The scout ship flew through empty space like a ghost in the dark. Jocks kept his hands tight on the controls, eyes scanning the nav screen every few seconds. No signals behind them, no pursuers for now. Leary sat curled up in the co-pilot's seat, a blanket over her shoulders and her head against the glass. She hadn't spoken since they left the moon, not even when Bale gave her a memory chip wrapped in old cloth and told her, "This might help you remember who you are." Jocks didn't push her to speak. He knew silence sometimes said more than words ever could. He set course for a forgotten place, a drifting relic called Havenine. Once, it had been a warship, a dreadnought with enough firepower to destroy moons. Now, it was a floating sanctuary, run by no government, protected by no flag. Only those with ghosts in their past were allowed inside. When they docked, the metal doors hissed open and revealed a strange world within. Overgrown plants, soft lights, alien children playing in quiet corners. No guards, no cameras, just peace and old machines humming in the walls. Leary stepped onto the deck and stopped, eyes wide. A tall, four-armed elder approached her, skin like cracked marble and voice like rain. "You are not the first Arcborn to arrive," the elder said, bowing his head. Leary blinked, her lips trembling. "There are others." The elder nodded slowly. "Yes, child, come with me." Jocks followed as they were led into a chamber lined with floating crystals and memory stones. The walls glowed when Leary passed, reacting to her presence. "It remembers." "You?" The elder whispered, "Because your kind built it." Leary stared at her reflection in a polished slab of obsidian. "I don't remember building anything," she said, voice shaking. The elder placed a hand on her shoulder, "But the blood in you does." They showed her the archive room. Inside were dozens of beings, all strange, all unique, all quiet. Each had marks on their skin, just like hers. Some had powers, healing touch, mind link, light manipulation. They didn't call themselves special, just survivors. Jocks watched Leary's face change as she sat among them, listened to their stories, and slowly began telling her own. "I was born in a lab," she said. "They said I was made, not born. That my DNA was from stars, from war, from secrets. One of the hybrids. A silver-eyed girl named Vita took her hand and smiled." Same. Leary laughed then, a soft, broken laugh. But it was real, that night. Jocks stood on the top deck, looking out into the starfield. Leary joined him, her face calm but serious. "You should leave me here," she said. "They'll never stop chasing me." Jocks didn't look away from the stars. "I didn't fly across 6 systems to give up now." "I'm dangerous," she whispered. "What if I lose control?" Jocks turned to her. "Then I'll help you find it again." She stepped closer, voice barely a breath. "Why do you care so much?" "Because no one ever cared for me when I needed it," he replied. "And I promised myself I'd never walk away when someone else needed it." Leary's eyes shimmered in the starlight, but she blinked the tears away. She opened her hand and showed him the memory chip Bale gave her. "I think it's time I see what's on this," she said. They returned to the ship, plugged it into Jox's console, and waited as old files loaded one by one. What they saw was not what they expected. A scientist's log, a human voice, tired and shaky. "She's not a weapon," the voice said. "She's a message, a bridge, maybe the only one that can stop what's coming." Footage played Leary as a small child, playing with star charts, touching alien symbols that glowed under her fingers. She was never supposed to be found. The voice continued, "But if you're seeing this, take her to Haven 9. She belongs there." Leary covered her mouth, shaking. "They made me for peace," she said, barely able to believe the words. "Not for war." Jox leaned back, heart pounding. Whatever Leary was, she wasn't just rare. She was made to stop something bigger than either of them. And the ones hunting her weren't trying to control her. They were trying to erase her before she remembered. He looked at her and said, "Then we've got work to do." The last safe place, the stars outside Haven 9, looked peaceful. But Jox knew that peace wouldn't last. Inside the ship, the halls had grown quieter. Whispers filled the corners, soft and worried. Some of the Arcborn had sensed something in the void, a change in the energy, a shift in the silence. Leary sat in the center chamber, a glowing pattern pulsing beneath her fingertips. It was an old star map, buried deep in the sanctuary's memory. It showed ancient sectors, forgotten paths, and one blinking red zone with a label written in a language no one had spoken in centuries. She pressed her hand to it, and the map shifted, revealing a hidden location, the vault of the Corwills. Jox stood behind her, arms crossed, watching it all unfold. "What is that place?" he asked. Leary turned to him, her voice distant. "It's the last safe place." Jox frowned. "You mean like this sanctuary?" "No," she said. "It's older, deeper, and locked to Arcborn only." The elders of Haven 9 gathered quickly, their faces grim. One of them spoke. "If the Corwills are still active, they could rewrite the balance of power." Jox didn't care about power, but he cared about what might happen to Leary if they waited. "I'll take her," he said. "Show us how to get there." The journey wasn't easy. The vault was hidden in a dead system surrounded by gravitational rifts and magnetic storms. Most ships would never survive it, but Haven 9 provided them with an old diplomatic cruiser built to resist spatial collapse. It had no weapons, only speed, shields, and encrypted codes before they left. Vita hugged Leary tightly, whispering, "Don't forget us." Leary smiled, holding her close. "I'll remember everything now." Jox powered the cruiser up, and together they left the only real home they'd known. The void beyond the sanctuary was darker than usual. 3 jumps in. The ship shook hard. Something was tracking them. Jox rerouted power to stealth mode. Hands steady on the controls, a black cruiser appeared behind them. Smooth and silent, it didn't fire, didn't hail. It just followed. Leary's breath quickened as she pressed her fingers to the console. The cruiser's lights dimmed, then cut out completely. "It can't follow us through the core rift," she whispered. "But we only get one shot." They reached the edge of the dead system where space folded into itself. Jox looked at her. "Are you sure?" Leary nodded. "If we make it through, they can't reach us." He punched the engines. The ship dove into the gravitational tear. Everything warped, sound, sight, time, even memory. Then light exploded, and they passed through. When the ship settled, they saw it, the vault. It wasn't a building, It was a living planet, glowing from within. Shaped like a perfect sphere, massive doors opened as they approached. Guided by Leary's presence, they landed in silence. And Leary stepped out alone, drawn toward the center. Jocks followed at a distance, not wanting to disturb whatever was happening inside the vault's heart. Glowing figures appeared, projections of the first arc weavers. They spoke in a language only Leary could understand. She stood still, listening, tears running down her face. Then the room lit up, and a pulse of warm light surged through her body. Jocks shielded his eyes, stepping back as the walls shook gently. When the light faded, Leary stood taller, glowing softly. She turned to him and said, "I understand now." He walked to her slowly. "What did they tell you? That I wasn't made by accident," she said. "I'm a link between worlds. I carry their legacy and their final key." Jocks's chest tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means," she whispered, "I can stop what's coming, or be the reason it wins." Before he could answer, the alarms on the ship screamed. The dark cruiser had followed them somehow, and it was landing fast. Leary touched the vault floor, and light surged out across the planet. Ancient defenses woke from their sleep. Towers rose. Shields flickered to life. The black cruiser fired first, but the bolts vanished in midair, swallowed by energy walls. A massive beam shot out from the vault, disabling the enemy ship in seconds. No death, no fire, just silence. Leary stood at the center of it all, arms raised, glowing bright like a new star. Jocks stood in awe, silent, breathless. She turned to him, eyes full of calm. "I'm not just a survivor now," she said. "I'm the protector of what's left." More than a miracle, the vault had fallen quiet. The enemy ship lay powerless on the far side of the glowing plain. Held down by invisible roots of light, Jocks stepped outside the cruiser, boots pressing into the soft, humming ground of the living world. The sky above shimmered with colors he had no name for. But all he could see was Leary, standing at the heart of the vault, like it had always waited for her. She wasn't the same girl he'd found curled up and freezing in that broken ship. Now she moved with calm, spoke with purpose, and carried light in her veins. Jocks approached slowly, unsure if he was looking at a person or a miracle. She turned and smiled, tired but clear-eyed. "They're gone," she said softly. "The vault stopped their signal. They can't track us anymore." Jocks let out a slow breath. "So it's over." Leary shook her head gently. "No, not over, but quieter now." She led him back into the vault's inner chamber, where the ancient lights dimmed as they passed. There on a stone pedestal sat a glowing sphere, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. "This is their legacy," she said. "The knowledge of the Arcweavers sealed until the right one came." Jocks stared at it. "And that's you." Leary nodded. "They made me with their codes, their memory, their hope, but I needed you to bring me here." He looked down, rubbing the back of his neck, unsure how to carry such praise. "I just didn't want to leave you in that frozen wreck," he said. "Didn't seem right." She stepped closer, reached out, and took his hand. "You didn't just save me, Jocks," she whispered. "You gave me time to become who I am, together." They activated the core, and the vault responded. Beams of data flowed through the air, painting ancient worlds, lost species, peaceful futures that never happened. Leary absorbed it all, her body gently glowing with each passing moment, but her eyes stayed on Jocks, and her hand never let go of his. Outside, the world began to reshape the vault, spreading its light across deep space, sending out a signal not of war, but of rebirth. Later, they returned to Haven 9, where the children ran to greet them, laughter echoing through the old halls. Leary knelt to hug Vita and the others, telling them they had a future now, not just a past. Jocks started fixing up the hangars, rebuilding docking bays, adding heating units to every hallway. He didn't say it out loud, but it was clear he was staying. At night, under the stars, Leary sat beside him near the landing deck. She rested her head on his shoulder, and for the first time, there was no fear in her breath. "You think people like me will ever be welcome on Earth?" she asked. Jocks looked up at the stars. Then down at her. "I think if they knew you, they'd build statues." She laughed softly. "I don't want statues. What do you want?" he asked. She looked at him with warm eyes. "A home, a family, a place where no one calls me a mistake." "You've got that now," he said without hesitation. The wind blew gently across the deck, and the vault's soft hum echoed through space. Jocks had set out looking for scrap, hoping to fix an old ship and make a few credits. Instead, he had found something no one else in the galaxy even believed in anymore. He found a girl who was built in a lab, hunted by shadows, and meant to be erased. But instead of hiding her, he listened. Instead of selling her, he saved her, and now that girl had become the light guiding a forgotten galaxy back to life. Not just a weapon, not just a secret, but something far rarer, far more powerful than any code or machine. She was Leary, and she was more than a miracle. She was his reason to stay, and in the stillness of space, beneath endless stars, that was enough.